Now that we know how we're going to be graded after looking at the rubric and we have read the directions, it's time to approach the passage itself. And that's what this particular video is going to be about. So, after looking at the directions, we know a main idea that we're going to look at is social class. Now, that might not be the main idea we end up with, but it's a place to start based on the context they gave us. And then we know we can focus on tone, diction, and selection of detail among anything else we notice. I haven't read this passage yet, so I don't know exactly what I'm going to find. And I do have to approach it with a fresh mind. I don't want to be too focused on the things they say to see, because then I might ignore things I myself see. I should keep these things in mind, but that shouldn't be the only thing I'm looking for. I should look at it with my radar on for anything that might help me. Okay, I'm going to read the passage, and then I'll come back. So you should read the passage too. That way, when I talk about it, you know what I'm talking about. So pause the video, go read the passage, and then come back, and I will have read also. Okay, so I finished reading, and I've noticed a few things. One, we're dead on with our social class idea. That's the main focus of the entire passage, is the difference in social class between the father who has risen up and sees himself as part of the upper class, and his daughter who has just recently, because of him, joined the upper class, but she's not comfortable in the upper class yet. I noticed a ton of diction, and I noticed a lot of physical descriptions and details of when Elizabeth offends her father. He either sends her out of the room or leaves the room himself. So this physical separation, when he gets frustrated with her, he forces them to physically separate, which could be an example of what they're looking for here. One thing I noticed that they don't have listed here that I think is a really obvious choice is characterization of both Elizabeth and her father. That'll be an important part of my response to this passage. So now I've got to figure out how I'm going to organize it. The easiest way is probably just break up the passage into 3 sections, and I think that happens logically. After they discuss the slang stuff, that's a break. And then when it starts to discuss just her general disposition after the handwriting part, there's a break. So you have her use of slang in this section. You have her discussion of her handwriting in this section, and then her general disposition in the 3rd section. So that's one way I could attack this passage. So I could have it be chunk 1, chunk 2, and chunk 3. That would be a simple way to do it. And within those chunks, I would weave in my multiple literary elements. So I wouldn't be discussing one element at a time. I'd be bringing in multiple elements and discussing them. It's not the only way to do it. Another way to do it would be to attack it by the elements. So I could do characterization in the first body paragraph, diction in the second body paragraph, and then the details of physical separation in the 3rd body paragraph. In some ways that's simpler because you're only dealing with one element at a time, but in other ways it's more complex because you're going to be jumping around in the passage and you're not going to be really discussing the passage as a logical progression from beginning to end. But either could work. Another thing I want to figure out before I'm done planning this is where I can get that last point on the rubric, the sophistication point. Is there a place I can go within the passage to figure out how to apply a broader context to it? And if I talk about power and the effect of social class on how power dynamics play within relationships, that could be a place to go. Because we've got a father and a daughter, and their situation is suddenly changed, and the father now has even more power than a father usually had over her daughter at that time. He now also has the power of social class, and he uses the power of social class to diminish her and make himself feel more powerful. He uses it to put her down, and in putting her down, he makes himself feel stronger and better. And I think that's something that happens in any era. People will use social class as a way to make themselves feel superior to anyone beneath them on the social ladder. So if I can weave that in to my conclusion, then I can get that point that I need off the rubric. My next order of business is to figure out what my thesis is going to be. So that will be the next video. Mindeman out.